Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Art History, the Female Perspective, brought to you by Ina Dow and myself, Gemini Rising, on the Near Protocol. Today, we're going to talk about an artist called Artemisia Gentileschi. Um, she was born in the late 1500s and passed away in 1600s. She was a late Renaissance painter. One of the interesting facts that I just found out recently is that when she was 17 years old, she was raped. Um, and because she was the one being raped in that time period, she was um, had to testify in front of a court. Her father was a painter as well, and he had hired um, another painter who was part of his studio to be her um, uh, teacher, and he raped her. And her father took the guy to court. His name was Tassi. He's also a painter. Um, and she was put on the stand and actually tortured and um, tried to be made to uh, change her testimony, uh, but she never did. And eventually the guy was charged, but it was a very lenient charge. And he continued with his successful career. And there you have it. she That was life for a woman in the late Renaissance period in Italy. If you were raped, you were the one that was up against it. So she, her paintings, now that I found out about this story, have a lot of expression to, have a lot of expression in them in regards to that being done to her by an older man. She also painted herself, uh, did a lot of self portraits. This one here is actually a self portrait of her, painted in 1683 or 1638, sorry. Um, and well, her style was the Renaissance style. She used a technique called chiaroscuro, which highlighted the darks and the lights, were very, very important. So her next painting here, called um, Madonna and Child, is one of her first paintings that she did in 1609 to 1610. So, 10. This is actually before she got raped, because it said she was raped when she was 17. She did this when she was 16, I think. Um, 1603 would be, she would be 10, plus 5. So she would have been 15 when she painted that painting. Um, it's called Madonna and Child. It, illustrates the bond between mother and child, in this case, Madonna and Jesus. She plays with the lighting and the rich colors and very common style in late Renaissance. But interesting that it was a woman that painted it. In the next painting, called Susanna and the Elders, also done when she was 15, she is, or 16 actually, um, she is presenting the interpretation of the biblical story, which a lot of paintings were about during that time. Susanna is a virtuous woman, and she's caught in a vulnerable moment by two lecherous elders. Um, it's very interesting with the play of light and shadows. And like I said before, it's typical style of that time period. Uh, people artists painted biblical stories or mythical stories or portraits. That was basically their focus. And she did the same thing. This next painting, Triumph of Galatia, done in 1612. Um, again, this is capturing the story of the mythical figure of Galatia as she emerges from the sea on a shell chariot surrounded by dolphins and cherubic, um, what they called putty. Um, you can see the movement in this painting and the uh, I have a hard time pronouncing it, chiaroscuro technique. The play of light and dark is very, very visible here. Um, yeah, it's a very great testament to her artistic power, considering she was 18 when she painted this, um, or 19. Hold on a second. She was born in 1593. In 1603, she would have been 10. And in 1613, she would have been 20. So, yes, she was 8. Oh, she would have been 22 already. Sorry, my math is very bad, but you get the idea. She was quite a young woman while when she was painting these paintings. Danae is another portrait of a mythical world. It's Zeus's approach. You can see the woman behind her holding out her aprons, catching the shower of gold. Um, she's there in anticipation of Zeus appearing with uh, the idea of surrendering. Um, it's a Now that I've found out that she was raped, it's a very interesting. The subject matter she chooses is very interesting, especially this one here called Judas slaying Holofernes, which is also uh, a myth of the Assyrian of Judith taking down the Assyrian general Holofernes. Dramatic contrast of light and shadow. And you will see in many of her paintings, um, they are of female characters overcoming male dominance, I guess this would say. It really shows her raw emotion and that play of light with that chiaroscuro technique. And yeah, it's very intricate, very realistic, and very good for that period of time. Another one, Judith and her maidservant, which is the aftermath of the beheading. You can see the head inside that little basket there. Um, a lot of movement, a lot of drama, um, soft lighting, um, and you can really see the intricate texture of the skin of these two um, women, Judith and her maidservant. This next painting is a portrait of a nun. One of the interesting things is because she was a woman, she could only paint other women, like in the nude. She could not paint. She did not have access to nude men because she was a young woman in the 1600s. A lot of times she used herself in her images that she painted, like the previous one where she beheads Holofernes. It's actually her face that she painted in as portraying Judith. This one is a portrait of a nun. Again, the chiaroscuro technique, the play of dark and light, something that you've probably seen in a lot of Rembrandt paintings. Um, it adds that play of light adds depth and shadow in the painting, and gives it dimension. Um, so yeah, this is one of her portraits of a nun. Um, and this next one is a self portrait. She did many self portraits. This is herself as a lute player. It sort of gives you a glimpse into her world, that she's just not just a painter, but she has many talents, and she actually did play the lute. Um, the hallmark style of the chiaroscuro, um, that she uses throughout, um, casts a very soft light on the self portrait's face. It's interesting statement of her identity, her capabilities, and the challenge of the gender norms of her time. Um, it's really a testament to her courage, self awareness, and pioneering spirit in a male dominated world, especially after um, the things that she had been through at a very young age, that no women or even men should ever have to experience. Another two images here, self portrait as St. Catherine of Alexandria and self portrait as a female martyr, um, both done in the same style. I kind of find it interesting. One thing that I noticed is that her self portraits are always facing to the left, whereas the other ones face to the right. Um, she's Catherine the Great of Alexandria, um, sort of blurring the lines between myth and personal space, because she did incorporate her face into this um, depiction of a mythical person. Um, the same thing with the martyr, the female martyr, which again is ironic, because of everything that's happened to her. Um, and obviously, throughout these paintings, she is using oil paint. That was the only paint available at the time. This next painting, which is quite large, called Allegory of Inclination. It looks small actually here because of its size, but it is quite a large painting. Um, it's a symbolism um, of a muse representing artistic inclination, and there she is clutching a compass, which is a tool of precision and direction. Um, Her gaze goes off into, I guess you would call it, the future, and looking forward to things. So, what is she inclined to do? She's inclined to create, um, with her tools of precision and direction. Allegory of inclination. This next one is the conversion of the Magdalene. Again, a biblical story, where Mary Magdalene embraces the life of devotion and renounces her former ways. Again, that dramatic play of light and shadow that she is known for. Um, the background accentuates the emotional intensity of the scene. Very meticulous with the detail, right down to the back of her chair. Um, yes, a very poignant piece um, that really reflects her time and the emotions that she was going through at that time, I would imagine. uh, Penton Magdalene, another um, Mary Magdalene piece in a state of quiet penance. The sort of darkness basically brings the figure draped in light to the front. Even the velvet draping behind her is quite intricate and detailed. And her skin, as you can see, is glowing, like they like to call it. Another piece called Cleopatra Ferrara. Um, it depicts Cleopatra in the act of committing suicide. It's very hard to tell. I think she has a um, uh, viper in her hand, an asp actually. It's the story of Cleopatra about to kill herself, a la Artemisia style. It's worth noting, actually, that this painting was initially misattributed to Guido Canacci, but after time they realized that it was actually a painting by her. This next piece, Jael and Sisera, is a biblical narrative that showcases the decisive moment when Jael takes action against the Canaanite general Sisera. So there's Sisera lying on the ground with Jael, ready to, looks like, clobber him over the head with something in her hand. Again, that idea of female empowerment, obviously fueled by her past experiences. The play of light and dark, like as in all her paintings, the rich colors, um, the uh, captured movement, it's all in there. Another Mary Magdalene painting in ecstasy with the very dark background, which then highlights the beautiful skin and emotion on her face, an emotion of ecstasy, I would imagine. Um, it's supposed to be spiritual ecstasy in this case, because she has just renounced her ways and become uh, spiritual, I guess is the word. Um, her mastery lies in capturing the profound emotion, as you can see. It really does look like she is ecstatic. This next painting, called Saint Cecilia, is a composition where she introduces us to Saint Cecilia, who is actually the patroness of musicians. Here she is holding uh, a lute, and yeah, all the details you can see in her garments, the rich colors, The chiaroscuro technique of the play of light and dark um, really gives this painting some drama. This painting called Lucretia, um, who is a Roman heroine. It's sort of the heart rendering glimpse of the end of her life. She's got her face is kind of got a mixture of despair and emotion. She's holding that knife where she is about to uh, end her life. You can really see the softness, excuse me, the softness of her skin with the sort of glinting of that hard light glinting of the knife that is about to penetrate her chest. She uses that technique of light and dark to really highlight this painting. Um, she really had exceptional skill uh, as a painter. Lucretia. Here's one portrait that she has done of a male called um, Gonfaloniere or Gonfaloniere. Sorry, I'm not pronouncing this right. Um, uh, it is a standard bearer of a high ranking official of that time. It's a, and here he is in all his regal authority. Again, the bathing of light and dark with the shadows, the chiaroscuro technique, the richness of his fabric. It really is a glimpse into the time um, these people existed. This is what they wore. These are the things they did. This standard bearer here, uh, a high ranking official who has a lot of authority, as you can tell, I think. This next painting here, called The Sleeping Venus, again, that play of light and dark, mythological figures, Roman goddess of love, Venus is in a serene slumber. You can see by her face that she is very, very relaxed and serene. She's Her body is delicately draped. You can see that fine gauze like material that's covering her hips and her arms. Um, and there she is being looked over by an angel. This painting here is called Esther before Ahasuerus. Um, this is a depiction of Esther's, again, a um, biblical story of Esther's courage and vulnerability under um, as she's uh, brought before King Ahasuerus. Um, you can see the glow of Esther um, and all the rich detail of the clothing of the time. Obviously, it's interesting because at that time, painters depicted these myths and biblical stories, but the people in it were dressed of the during that period of time, which I find quite interesting. Um, this next painting, called The Annunciation, again a biblical story of when Gabriel delivers a divine message to the Virgin Mary. You can see the light and dark technique. Sure, this is quite a large painting, and a lot of the details are missing, but you can see on the top left hand side um, the faces of the angels, which are bright compared to the background. The face of Gabriel on the left, with looking at Virgin Mary, delivering that news that we all know if you were brought up in a Christian society. The divine conception of Jesus is upon us. Um, Again, uh, the clothing depicts the era. It's not clothing from that time, it depicts the era that she was in. Another picture of painting of Cleopatra. Obviously, this one is after she had died. You can see the snake that she used to kill herself, her servants looking over her. Um, very, very, uh, the composition, that triangular form, very common of its time. The very, very acute detail in the materials, and once again, these are not things that uh, Cleopatra or her maidservants would have worn at the time, but she is rendering it in the image of the day, using um, figures from her time period and clothing from her time period. This one here is the birth of St. John the Baptist, um, another biblical event heralding the arrival of John the Baptist. Elizabeth, John's mother, holds her newborn son. Uh, you can see how all the whole painting focuses on that baby. Um, the baby is the lightest. It's um, sort of a triangular composition where everything is pointing towards that child. Uh, a lot of the same detail in the clothing, um, and that light play of light and dark, which really enhances the power of this painting. Because if you didn't have that play of light and dark, it would just be pretty bland. So um, very reflective of the style at the time. Another myth, Corsica and the satire. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Um, there is the vivacious nymph Corsica. I imagine that's what the island Corsica was named after. And there's not too far in the distance, there's the evil satyr, emblematic of wild desires and untamed passions. But Corsica is keeping to herself. That the canvas bursts with life, echoing the age old tussle between temptation and innocence. So here she is being tempted away from her innocence. Again, a play of light and dark, the fabric details, and a myth set in the time period that she was living in, 1600s. Lot and his daughters, another biblical narrative, sort of uh, the interplay of Lot um, between his daughters. Interesting, you can see that the daughters are the ones that have the light shining on them, except for the daughter on the left. But Lot is in a pretty dark light. Very, very meticulously detailed. Uh, it's really about the human frailty and choices, uh, just as much as it is about her textures and hues and nuances um, that she used to create this painting. David and Bathsheba, again, a biblical tale. King David's gaze is drawn to where? To Bathsheba, I guess. You can see the city in the background. And just, like you can see again that chiaroscuro technique where she is bathed in light and is the center focal point of this painting. Here we have another biblical story, the adoration of the Magi. You can see baby Jesus in the sort of lower or left middle section. Again, the composition of the painting, everyone is looking at Jesus except for the guy behind one of the Magi who is kind of, I don't know what he's doing, but it really all sort of draws in to that Jesus um, image, using the techniques of light and dark and the composition. Again, notice the rich textures of the clothing. It's very radiant. I would say that all her paintings, because of this chiaroscuro technique, are very radiant paintings. Saint Januarius in the amphitheater at Pozzoloi. Um, I guess Saint Januarius is either named after January or January is named after him. Um, it's basically his martyrdom, depicting his martyrdom in the ancient amphitheater. Um, I don't really know much about this story, um, but you can see everything kind of looks very tumultuous around him. Um, it looks like things in the top left hand corner are sort of crumbling behind him. Uh, it's a historical recounting, although I don't really know the history about it. But this technique of the light and the dark, which is really making him the centerpiece in this painting. This one here is a ceiling painting. I'll call the Allegory of Peace and the Arts under the English Crown. It was a collaborative work between herself and her father, Orazio. Uh, and it's symbolizing the peace and arts under the patronage of the English Crown. Um, Here they have combined their talents. I think Orazio was getting old and not being able to um, uh, do these really difficult paintings. Like I said, this is actually on a ceiling. Trying to, I can't remember where exactly this ceiling is, but it is on a ceiling, done with her father. This final piece, sorry, called Bathsheba and her bath. Again, the composition, the lighting, the textures, everything kind of draws you uh, towards that central figure, which is actually Bathsheba, um, in getting ready for her bath or being prepared by her bath by her maidservants. Apparently, you cannot really see it on here, but up close you can see the water droplets that are glistening on her skin. So that is it for Artemisia. Um, a very rare glimpse into the uh, life of somebody who, a female who lived in the late Renaissance, the 1600s. Artemisia, uh, very, very strong girl considering what's happened to her, and a very interesting glimpse into the late Renaissance from the female perspective. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you at the next one.